Okay, you can start whenever you'd like.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the June 29th, 2020 meeting of the CB6 197A Committee Working Group. I'm Kavitha Matthew, and I'm the chair of the working group. This meeting is called to order at 7:03 p.m. Tonight, we're joined by District Manager Jesus Perez and Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. And Letty Simon will be taking minutes tonight for the record. I think we're ready to take attendance. So I think Cody will now take attendance by roll call.
Great. Right, working group members, I'll call you on your name and you just say if you are present. Jim Collins. Jim, unmute yourself and.
You're on mute.
Here.
Great, thank you. Kavitha Matthew.
Here.
Sandra McKee.
Here.
Wells Magali. Wells has not joined. Rich Mintz. Lou Sapersky. Sandra Gerard. Letty Simon.
Here.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
Here.
Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Great. That's 7, and that is a quorum.
Okay, that's everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and will appear on the screen in front of you. I think we have one item, yes. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the working group, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And I don't see any hands raised. So seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from April and early June's 197A working group meetings are still being drafted. They will be voted on at the next meeting. So let's get those in. And I'm going to go through ground rules, but I'll do it abbreviated since I think we've all done this so many times at this point. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question, please raise your hand through Zoom. And don't use the chat function for committee business, please, just for technical issues. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you and you can unmute yourself and speak. Otherwise, keep yourself on mute, please. And we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments distinct and germane to the discussion. And we're going to start with our first and only agenda item, which is really discussing the final report submitted by Bennett Midland. And when I say final, they've agreed to, take into consideration any comments or questions that we have. We had asked that questions be submitted last week. We got some questions from Jim yesterday, and because they came in a little bit late for me to vet everything, we decided not to have Bennett Midland join our meeting tonight. I'd like to review any comments with you all as a committee first, and then take anything back to Bennett Midland as we can agree upon. So if Jim, if you want to run through some of the comments, or if you want me to run through your comments, I can. I think we can address a lot of them. I've looked into some of the issues that you brought up.
All right. Either or is fine with me. I as I noted to you in our correspondence, I find substantial and significant shortcomings in the report. I don't think it met the requirements of the RFP, and I think that there's very little value added in the report as presented to us. if you want me to go into detail, I'm happy to.
Well, before you do that, I would like you to, maybe elaborate on some of the items you brought up, Jim, for sure. But before you do that, I just wanted to mention that we went through a whole process, which included definitely initially reaching out with an RFP to consultants, reviewing all the proposals, having a smaller group of committee members interview the consultants that were shortlisted, I guess, and then having the consultants revise their proposals based on our comments. And then the proposal was signed and that became our contract. And based on what I have as the contract and the deliverables, I've been meeting with them regularly through this since mid-March. Corinne and Sandy have been part of those meetings. Molly and Claude have been part of some of those meetings. And I have to say, I don't agree with you on that. I do think there are a couple of things that we can discuss and questions that you brought up, definitely pertinent to the discussion, but I feel like they've done a really good job and they were extremely, responsive with all our concerns and questions. So I want to lay it out that way first for you.
Well, I appreciate all the work that you and the other subcommittee members did. But when you read the RFP and look at what is required by the RFP, they did not answer or did not comply with that requirement. One of the things that annoyed me particularly was the outright dismissal of affordable housing by Bennett Midland with apparently no authority other than their own. They basically dismissed it out of hand, even though the borough president was saying that it was something that she was willing to support. And even though she provided another example of someone up in Community District 11 that was engaged in such an effort right now, they didn't follow up on that.
So I can address that. I can address that point if you'd like. I believe what you're referring to was mandatory inclusionary housing, the MIH, that they mentioned in the report and felt that it wouldn't meet the requirements of our residents fully. It's really just,
No. And that's not for them to make a decision on. That was our RFP, our resolution discussed. It wasn't MIH necessarily. It was affordable housing.
So affordable housing is definitely still part of our
but it's not. Read what they wrote. Read what they wrote. They didn't. They said that it's not I'll have to pull up the document.
Oh, I know what you're referring to, and I think it's a misread, and we can have them revise the language so it's very clear, but affordable housing is definitely still.
I wouldn't even pay for this report, frankly. I mean, the auditor in me says that they did not meet the requirements, very frankly, up front.
All right, Jim, I'm gonna give the floor to, I have a couple of people who wanna.
All right, I just want to make one other important point. Very important point is that apparently Councilmember Rivera's staff person indicated.
I can address that too, but let's do one item at a time. Can we hear from Sandy first and then Corinne?
And sorry, Jim, I just want to say that we did discuss mandatory inclusionary housing with Bennett Midland. And I think the consensus was that that's not the first route that we want to take. I think, as your experience on land use has probably led you to understand, it's not necessarily a great system and it's not even something that city planning recommends anymore. So for there to be mandatory inclusionary housing, we'd have to upzone. And I think the group that spoke with Bennett Midland felt there were other options first that we should be investigating. So I think that may be what Bennett Midland went with in terms of the report. But I would also agree that absolutely low income and housing is definitely a part of the goals that we discussed.
Well,
Sandy, let's let Corinne weigh in too. Corinne?
Basically what Sandy said. Yes, I think, Jim, it really is. I'm a little confused. Are you? Is it what you don't like that MIH is being just dismissed as a possibility, or is it that you read it as if we are no longer pursuing affordable housing?
The specific issue that I have is on the fourth of the point sheets that Kavitha distributed. It says the other problem with the paragraphs commencing at even if MSBI, where is it? Even if MSBI were to pursue a ULURP, the concessions to the community gained through the review process would likely center on mandatory inclusionary housing. MSBI would likely request to upzone these parcels in exchange for ensuring affordability of 30% of the units developed by the next owner. Well, this is what really annoyed me, because it's a value judgment on their part, which to my knowledge, they were never authorized to make. While this would be an improvement from full market rate housing, it would not help the most vulnerable residents in our community district of affordability. And then they discussed what happens with 80% of AMI. And since we had listed affordable housing as one of the things that we would like to pursue in our RFP and in the resolution that funded their contract, it seemed to me that their dismissal of it was unauthorized and shouldn't have been accepted. Remember that we were granted this authority by the end of the board.
Jim, as the chair of the Housing and Homeless Committee, I can assure you that we as a board do not consider, or most of us on the board do not consider MIH affordable housing for most. The formula around MIH is severely flawed. The formula around AMI is severely flawed, and it does not serve the more vulnerable in our community. And that's why that sentence is in there.
I understand that.
However, we did express, Jim, before we go on, those of us who met with Bennett Midland did feel like we do want to help our actual residents in our actual community not meet this formula of MIH, which we didn't feel would help.
I understand that. And if that was the case, then we should have looked to a modified formula, perhaps a 50%. Remember that none of this is written in stone at this point. We could have, since this is a visioning idea, this is something we could have talked about, and that perhaps that they certainly should have talked about at a 50% level, or whatever.
Right. So again, I think what we've ended up with here, just so everybody understands, this strategic report was something that was done with an intensive focus over 12 weeks during a pandemic, with interviews after interviews. Okay, and we came up with language that we felt, but I really do appreciate someone who wasn't part of the full-on process, weighing in and saying, it looks like you left out affordable housing, because if that's how someone reads it, we certainly don't want it to read that way. And we can, go back and make sure that's covered. But it wasn't done by Bennett Midland's authority. It was done by our collaboration with Bennett Midland and expressing what we expressed in the meetings.
The other huge priority item that I think they overlooked, did not mention in the body of the report, is the possibility raised by Katie Loeb of Councilmember Rivera's office, is that there may be a deed restriction with respect to this property.
So I can address that one. I was on that call with Katie Loeb and with Bennett Midland. I asked to be part of that call. I believe that Molly was on that call as well, or someone else from our committee was on that, or someone else from our board was on that. And I have notes from that meeting as well. And I went back through my notes because I didn't catch that when I went through their notes. And I did see that and thought that is troubling. But in my notes, what was said by Katie Loeb was that the only way that the city would have any influence over the property is if indeed there was a restrictive deed on it. She didn't, to my recall, say that there likely was one. And then I looked up restrictive deeds in the open source book and went back to Bennett Midland, and both of us discovered the same thing, that there is no restrictive deed on that property. So that opportunity, while it would have been really an interesting one, is not there.
All right, fine. And the third thing was the suggestion by the West Side Federations for Senior and Supportive Housing was to look at a federally qualified health center partnership with supportive housing. And I didn't see any expansion upon that notion within the report, even though it seems like one of the more obtainable objectives of those two parcels.
Right, and we talked about potential partnerships with a lot of nonprofit organizations along with for-profit developers, and a combined kind of solution that maybe would make the most sense. And I think although they may not have laid out every single one specifically, that's out there for sure still as an option.
Well, let's
And
go
this
through.
report is meant to be, what I think of it is a framework to move forward with. It's more like a skeleton, and we all have a lot of work to do. The somewhat disappointing part about this process was, I think all of us were hoping we'd get this nicely wrapped package of, here you go, here's the solution for the community for all your problems. But what we actually came away with was, here are the major steps that we've distilled it to that we think you should take immediately. And I can address your timeline issues on that one as well, the way they've laid them out. We've actually already started with all of these things that they've recommended. And I've reached out to all of you and asked for volunteers, right, to do outreach and to develop the website that Corinne has decided to help take on. We've defined outreach partners, and I know you may think we've missed a few, but just because they're not necessarily laid out in the interviews doesn't mean they didn't reach out or that they weren't on our outreach list and that we won't reach out to them in the future. So I had a list going around before we started the whole process with all the religious institutions I found around that area, all of the other organizations that we thought would be potentially helpful stakeholders. And we have no intention of leaving anybody out, including the co-op boards or whoever else we think might be helpful. Once we get, that's why we have that one pager to go out to everyone we can in the community.
I understand. None of those were addressed in the body of the report. St. George's Church was the only faith institution that I'm aware of.
I have a list right in front of me, Jim, of everything that, and these are the ones that we will continue. We have a lot of work still to do. So if you looked at the list that I had St. George's, I have East End Temple, I have Religious Society of Friends, I have St. Mary's Byzantine Catholic Church, Church of the Epiphany, Shabbat of Gramercy, Brotherhood Synagogue, Medina Islamic Council. I have Trinity Grace Church a little further along, but still we have a whole swath that we've identified and given to.
But I hadn't even expanded it that far. I was only talking specifically with respect to those faith institutions that are within the boundaries.
Right, within the boundaries. Understood. I went a little further outside thinking if there were some way to get influence. But again, what I need from what we all need in this committee from everyone is to hit the ground running at this point. I'm happy to look back at the report and make some suggestions for things they can add or tweak or clarify.
Well, I think that they need to meet, Kavitha, I think they need to meet some of the requirements that are listed in the RFP.
Again, I think the RFP is replaced once we go forward with their proposal and the contract. We are meeting the contract. We are meeting everything that they've laid out in their.
We gave them $20,000 to comply with this RFP. $20,000, $18,000 to comply with this RFP. And when I look at this RFP and I look at their report, I don't see compliance with the RFP. I don't see them fulfilling the requirements of the RFP. I see.
Right. Jim, we laid out the ground rules in the beginning, and I'm supposed to be calling on people. So I'd appreciate if I could call on Sandy right now, and then I'll let you respond. Sandy.
Jim, could you please be specific?
Yeah.
Just one point at a time. And I think that would be helpful for all of us. Thank you.
Well, you have the points that Kavitha distributed.
No, I'm sorry, what do you feel they did not meet in the RFP?
In the RFP.
Yeah, that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Currently, thank you.
Okay. They were asked to provide a detailed description of stakeholders, which they did not.
But we gave them that.
Okay, well,
And that's in the earlier
it should
documents.
have been in the report.
Right.
It should have been in the report. Or attached as an add.
We can add a list of the people, all the ones that Kavitha just read off.
We can do an addendum for that if we need to.
Yeah, that's an
As well as
appendix,
the tenants
no
committee,
problem.
As well as the co-op and condo boards.
Yeah, and I had asked, again, this is something that's a little frustrating for me is when I made that list initially, I just took what you guys already had in the Dropbox before I even became part of this group. I added what I thought were other people we could reach out to. And then I asked everyone in the working group to add any other stakeholders that they felt were, going to be valuable in this process. And I did not get any responses whatsoever.
Say again?
So
Can you repeat
I
that?
asked for those before we even started this process. At the very beginning, when we engaged, when we were interviewing and engaging a consultant, I sent out a list of stakeholders, right? And we've asked for that repeatedly. And while we had Peter Cooper and Stuytown as the largest groups of residential organizations, tenant organizations, we didn't put in every single co-op and condo board. But we can list that if that's, I think it's great to reach out to them, but I don't have all the contacts. I had asked for people to add to the spreadsheet whatever they knew, and that didn't happen. So to call, this is very nitpicky, and it's like, I don't think it's not meeting the RFP if there's a few things that you can add to it.
None of this is a criticism of you all, okay? Or the people that dealt with.
Again, I'm going to call on you, Jim, but I don't think this should be a criticism of the consultant who we've worked closely with throughout the process, who you've seen drafting before.
At all.
And sorry, Jim, what other issues did you have? Like we want to make it a good report. If you could just go through. We can add an appendix. I think that's absolutely not a problem.
I sent a markup copy of the RFP to Kavitha earlier this evening.
And sorry to interrupt, Jim, but we have that. You had mentioned that you don't think they met the requirements of the RFP. So I think that's a little different. I mean, you had some concerns about the tone, which we can talk about, but.
Well, I had concerns about my tone.
No, but
the tone of the report, I understand.
The tone of the report.
And I'm fine with you guys, weighing in on that, because I think it can be seen as a little bit maybe too strongly worded. It was the early part of the report, the first couple of paragraphs, where they were talking about disrupting and such things, where we can go back and say, you know what, that language, maybe we need to rethink that. But again, as Sandy's saying, I went through every point and every markup that you sent. I spent my day doing that, Jim, even though I do have a day job and I wish I had gotten this sooner. And I don't see anything that shows that they didn't meet the requirements of the RFP or of the proposal or of the contract that was finally signed with them. We went through checklist and definitely made sure that they had covered all the bases.
I don't think that they identified the coalition that would be able to finance the purchase of the buildings. Just going back to the RFP again.
Well, I don't think any of us can really identify that right now. What we did was get some suggestions.
That's what we hired them to do, was to identify a coalition that would be able to finance the purchase of the buildings.
That's what we'd like to do, ultimately, but again, that's not something that we got to yet at this point in the study. That's something that
want to charge you another $60,000 to do that.
We certainly don't have to decide whether we retain Bennett Midland for further work. What we've identified as the main point going forward is, on top of our work, which is really about massive amounts of outreach and connection with our community, it really is some financial modeling that we can provide that gives a basis for Beth Israel to be convinced that there is some kind of value in pursuing a different solution than just going to the highest bidder, right? So that's something that They never signed on to do financial modeling of any kind. They came up with outreach to several groups that they thought might be interested and tried to assign the ones that they thought were most likely to move forward with.
Well, as I read it, the modeling was I think a 20, they gave a range of values, but I understood that from their other correspondence that they were proposing additional work, which is work that would have been covered had they completed the requirements of the RFP, of the original RFP. That was the issue that I had with it.
Sandy, you're trying to say something in there?
Well, and you know, I think we can agree to disagree on some of these things, but can we maybe hear from the rest of the committee about the comment that Jim has about the tone? I think it would be great to hear some feedback on that. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to look at the list. Do we have any feelings from the rest of the committee about the the stance that's been taken?
I think it was a good framework for discussion, and I think they met that goal. I don't think that we expected them to solve every problem, but I think that the document itself, and I will say I'm not as familiar with it as Jim and as Kavitha and Corinne and Sandy, but when I look, it's a good general document that gives us the basis to move forward. And I think on that basis, they put in a lot of time and effort, and it gave us things to think about and to react to so that we can make some kind of plan or agenda to move forward. So I don't have the same objections that Jim has. I don't think that any consultant that's preparing a strategic plan has all of the answers. And I just think that what they did was give us substance and a lot of things to react to and a lot of things to think about amongst ourselves and to move it forward. That's my comment. I'm now going on mute.
Thanks, Letty. Does anybody else have thoughts on it?
Yeah, this is Rich. I'll just say that the way that I read this process was that it was supposed to orient us to move forward in a direction with more information than we had before and more of a sense of purpose. And I do feel like that was met.
Thank you, Rich. Any other comments? Claude, did you take yours out?
No,
See Corinne?
I thought Corinne was going to say.
Yeah, Corinne's raising her hand. Okay, go ahead, Corinne. You're still on mute.
She's muted.
Sorry, you think after like several months of Zooming, I could do better at this, right? You know, just to kind of, I think what the way Letty said it was good, but I just kind of wanted to say that, you know, if you read the RFP, you know, we're asking for a strategic report and an identification of potential organizations. We're not asking, you know, there was never an RFP where we were expecting a package that we could just, you know, present to MSBI. And I do feel that, you know, we can definitely tweak language here and there, but I would really love to move forward with some of these suggestions. It's going to be, like Kavitha says, it's going to be a mammoth job. And we're going to have to reach out to a lot of organizations, like you're mentioning, Jim. I mean, you're absolutely right. We have to contact co-op boards and tenant organizations all around that area. But that's going to be up to us.
Jim,
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, Corinne, that the problem is that the RFP had very specific wording. It was very clear. It says identification of a coalition that would be able to finance the purchase of the buildings. Okay. When
potential organizations, identification of potential organizations, that's in the report.
Not meaning that they would come back and meaning people that may be available for this kind of work, not we might engage them somewhere in the future, okay? It says identification of potential organizations. So they should have given us a list of names of not-for-profit developers with whom presumably they have some kind of relationship. They didn't do that. I mean, we're paying them as
we did go through.
finish. The reason that we engage consultants is for their expertise, for their relationships. Okay, when somebody hires me, they hire me because of expertise and connections and what have you. This is not an instance of that occurring. They are basically saying, "Here, you guys do it," and that's not what they were hired to do. I'll be happy to rest my case if they fulfill all of the requirements of the RFP, but I don't see that here. And if we're voting tonight to accept or continue this requirement, continue this relationship, I would most definitely vote no. And as a matter of fact, I would vote to talk to them about their fee because they did not fully comply with the RFP. And that's somebody that, okay, this is coming from somebody that's a former auditor at one time in my life and who does these kind of things, did these kind of things as an auditor. If you're not meeting the contract requirement, you're not going to get paid to do it.
So again, you referenced the contract requirement, which I'm glad you did, because I'm going back to the contract, right? I'm going back to the contract that was done based on the proposal that we accepted.
You have the whole contract? Because I don't have that.
Oh, if you don't have that, we can send that to you, but that document is more, recent and is valid based on what we've decided to go forward with them on. And that lays out, the hours spent, the outreach, the different steps that we're going to take, the methodology they were going to use, and everything else. And I'm sorry, Jim, but I am a project manager and architect by trade. I have managed multi-million-dollar projects for my entire career. I know when a consultant is not delivering, and this is not what happened here. I agree with you that there could be some tweaks in the language, which is why I'm so glad you took the time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and find language that might not be so clear to, especially to someone who's reading a report and hadn't been part of the process. So I think we should go through and make those changes. But I think in terms of meeting the general outlined requirements that we all agreed upon, they definitely did that. And with that,
Can I just make one brief comment?
Sure.
Can I make one brief comment? I agree with Letty and Sandy and Corinne in terms of what they're articulating. And I don't think it was our expectation that they would hand deliver to us a package of developers that could bring the project forth. However, I was surprised that they picked the two major ones in the city that could possibly do it. And that is L&M and that is Monadnock. So they made the suggestion of who we should be looking at and who we should attempt to deal with.
Actually, by
excuse me, Jim, I didn't interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
I've had the experience of working with Monadnock. I did the what's your name building with them on 30, right across from Bellevue, the micro units. And I've had the experience of working with L&M. They did the whole project for National Dance Institute up in Harlem. And they brought that whole project together. Now, it's up to us to establish those contracts and see if we can develop a working relationship with them. But I do think that the fact that they picked those two primary entities was part of meeting their need of what we were supposed to look at.
All right, Sandy.
Can I just reply quickly? Well, since we're on that topic, they did not mention those developers in their report. They mentioned that as a suggestion from, I believe it was Councilmember Rivera's staff. It was in the notes of their meetings. It says it's on page 23 of the draft.
Are you looking at the draft or the final report? Again, all your comments were based on a draft report and there were changes.
from May 20th. I would have to access the original.
So I think maybe we should, pause this and
Go
we
ahead.
can look at the final report and then decide if that's still an issue for
Go
you.
ahead.
Sandy, I'd like to cede the floor to Sandy. She'd had her hand up for quite a while now.
And I think we're getting we digress. We can always vote about whether we want to accept the report or not, but Jim's comment was he finds too aggressive, the tone, and contentious. And that's actually something I would like to hear feedback from the rest of the committee. Is this something we should try and tone down a little bit? Should we not be quite as direct in our how it's been set up in the report? Does anyone else have a comment or a concern with the way it is written?
This is Rich. If I can respond to that, if we're going to tone it down, who are we worried about offending with the tone that's in there now?
My understanding is it's MS. I always get the acronym mixed up. Sorry, but
MSBI.
MSBI. Thank you.
Is that a serious concern? I mean, they sort of have no choice but to play ball with us up to a point, right?
They don't really have to do anything with us unless they're required to, Rich. But I agree that I'd like to hear from others, because I wonder, it's really a matter of who's looking at the report, who's seeing the report and taking that as like the holy grail of what we're moving forward with. And if the case is that we might offend someone, I'd rather not. I'd rather move forward, maybe somewhat, I don't know if I'd use the word aggressively, but definitely effectively is more like it. Corinne, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, as Kavitha and Sandy, we actually discussed tone a lot, especially because I'm going to start working on the website at some point, and we were talking about what kind of tone to have, and the website is definitely going to be friendly. There's not, but I do think that a little sprinkling of a little bit of strong language here and there in the report, I don't disagree with. But definitely, the website is going to be very MSBI friendly, because in the end, we need them as a partner more than anything. That's it.
Thank you, Corinne. Any other thoughts on the tone of the document in general? Jim, let me hear from the others, because we know you thought it was a little aggressive. So I want to just see if anyone else. No.
I'll say this. After working with MSBI over 10 years, I don't find it that aggressive.
Okay, that's good to know, because honestly, I don't have any kind of relationship with MSBI other than, going to their doctors and things. So I'd like to know.
I work with the people that we're going to hand the document into. So
how do you feel with that?
I don't feel that it's that aggressive at all.
Okay, I think it's pretty mild. I think that you're right. There are a few stronger words in there, but really it's nothing that I would be reluctant to show to anybody. I feel very much like we can, once we tweak this, we can get it out in front of everyone, whether it's, MSBI or other partners, and not feel like we've done anything that goes against what we would do as a committee of a community board.
Kavitha?
Yes.
Hi. We read this report. I know I did in the office. We read everything that goes out from the board, and looking at language and grammar and style and things like that. And I think I see what everyone is saying, that the language seems fine. If there's maybe one very minor quibble on page 4 where it says CB6 seeks to disrupt the likely trajectory, maybe seeks to influence, but the likely trajectory. But as you know, if I were reading this as a resolution, and oftentimes when there's peculiar language in a resolution, we'll go to a committee and say, is this what you meant to say? And, you know, we can finesse the language. But other than that one word, it did seem to read like a, you know, very professional report.
Thank you so much, Jesus. I appreciate that. And again, that's the word that stood out to me as well, because I don't know, while disruption can be defined in various ways, I don't want it to be taken as like this negative aspect of what we're trying to do. It really is to influence. And Jim, if you want to talk, I'd rather you just I want to give others an opportunity. Letty, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think what we're looking for is firm but friendly. We don't want to be antagonistic, because we want to draw them in to be able to speak with us. And on the other hand, you know, we want to be able to have some friendly contact with them. You know, they're going to be it's going to be difficult enough, but I think that you know, one or two words changes the whole tone and doesn't alter the content. So go for it.
Okay. I think, you know, I'm fine with switching that one word, disrupt, to influence is fine with me. If others are, you know, in agreement. I want to basically go through the comments, Jim, that you had, and, you know, anything else we've discussed here, and put it into a way. I don't want to just hand them a marked up document that we expect them to change exactly how it's been marked up. I would like us to go back as a committee and have agreement about the things we'd actually like to change or clarify or add or delete, you know. So again, that's the goal here. Jim?
In those same paragraphs, the ones that Jesus referenced, okay, immediately after that, the language says that we would like to be able to intervene in a private sale, which is not in our scope of authority. I would drop that word and use opine upon. If you're keeping this whole paragraph, or this whole set of paragraphs, which I think are superfluous. And then going further down, where the line is must be reviewed for the endorsement by the community board, I would just say must be reviewed by the community board. We don't, you know, endorsement makes no difference if we're giving it an affirmative approval, fine, but we may not necessarily endorse it. And the next line, 2 lines below that, officials will likely match the community board's recommendations of when community board's recommendations when making the decision, and leave out those intervening words. These are all in the markup. These are all in the yellow markup I sent.
Right. I'd like to focus in, like you just did, on specific words that you have trouble with, rather than, you know, deleting whole.
Again, I think the whole paragraph is superfluous. I think you're fine just saying, you know, they can build this as a ULURP. If they were giving us real value for their money, they could say, you know, the bulk of these 2 different lots would be X under ULURP.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, under as of right. And
so any other opinions on that?
A valuable report. This is.
I was just trying to see if any other members of the group had thoughts on that. Okay, Sandy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we're hoping that this document will be read by people who are not familiar with the community board. So I think that's part of the goal here, is just to try and let people know what we can do and sort of get them excited in assisting us in the process and being a part of the process. Mm-hmm. So I know quite often in committee meetings, even people who have been on the board for a long time aren't always familiar with land use and how the process works. And I just think sometimes it's better to over-explain than to under-explain. So I find these paragraphs actually helpful in going through the process and what we hope to achieve. So I think we should keep them. I don't mind making the minor, like the minor changes sound fine. I don't think it changes the context of the whole paragraph.
Are we content with totally dismissing the notion of affordable housing?
So we're not, and we never did that. So again, I think what we can do, Jim, is go back. What we can do is go back and make sure that it's clearly stated in the report that affordable housing is still there, whether we did have an opinion about mandatory inclusionary housing. You know, that doesn't mean we're. So we're going to go back and make sure that that's very clear. I appreciate you bringing that up because I want to make sure that is clear and it's in the report as noted. Okay. And I agree that, I mean, I tend to think that it gives context, those paragraphs, even though, you know, they are meant to be like something to give a little context and background and simplified, you know, reasons and history of what we're doing here in the first place, why this report's being done. So I'd like to keep them in with those minor changes if others agree to it. So what's the best way for us to kind of finalize and get our comments back? Do you, Jesus, I'm wondering if we just mark up a few of those things that we're definitely going to address, and we can send it back to Midland. And I told them when I contacted them and said, we don't need them at the meeting tonight, but we're going to follow up with them over the next couple of days with a, you know, comprehensive.
Oh, one other technical point is 380 Second Avenue. Is that where that building is built? They're doing an additional build on that property? I
don't.
It's listed as 380 Second Avenue, and they're
just want us to check the address of the property.
The whole development is 13th Street and 14th Street. Joint diseases, well, it's the whole property, so it could be any one of those addresses that they may use.
But 380 Second Avenue is at 22nd Street and 2nd Avenue.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we can definitely check that if that's an error. I don't know.
2nd Avenue should be spelled out as a word now.
Kavitha, to answer your question, yes, if you guys can send to info@cbsix.org any sort of suggestions for changes, along with page numbers and things like that. If you want to mark up the PDF, if you have the software to do that and send that in, that's also fine too. That'd be great. Again, we're reading it with a fine-tooth comb. And again, as we read our resolutions, we read them as if we were a member of the public who does not follow community board business. So we want to make sure that they make sense in plain English. And like Sandy said, yeah, when I read these paragraphs, I was like, oh, okay, they're explaining the Euler process for folks who may not be familiar with it. So yeah, we can, and that particular line that was in question, I probably would have rendered it as community boards are able to opine on private sales through the uniform land use process, because that's what they're doing, or make recommendations or things like that. But yeah, send in your suggestions and we can sort of pool them all together. And if there's some that seem to conflict with each other, we can work with you guys to find some consensus on those, and then submit something to Bennett Midland for final revisions.
Okay.
Vitha, I'll send out a reply from the reminder email, and it'll contain the Dropbox link again for those who you know, just so it's at the top of everyone's email and everyone can just reply to that chain, and then they'll all be in one central place for us.
Right. I just want to come to a consensus before we actually send this out. So we can take a stab at it and send it out, I think. Otherwise, I feel like it's just going to take.
Also, Claude, if I can just comment, that L&M development and Monadnock,
Monadnock.
Pronounced. Yeah, that was a suggestion again by Katie Loeb that I didn't see made the body of the report. And I'm looking over the June 3rd report and I don't see it there either. So just a
Well, I
comment.
just briefly scanned it today, but I did see it mentioned. And that's why
Yeah, it was a conversation they had with Katie Loeb.
No, I think it's in the body of the report, unless I'm mistaken.
no, I saw it somewhere in their documents.
Right. Not just in the, right, not just in the conversation.
No, it wasn't just the conversation. It was in their documents.
I believe so too. Because actually what happened is we met right after they prepared the draft. Sandy, Corinne, and I met with them and reviewed that. They gave us their suggestions. They discussed why they recommended those particular
Yes.
groups and developers to move forward with. And that's why it wasn't in the draft, but it was in the final. And I'm going to just make
I'll
sure.
have to double check that. I'm scanning it here as we're talking. I didn't see it.
Okay. So beyond that, I don't have any other, I don't have comments from anyone else. I'd really like to wrap this up this week and send any comments back to them and finalize the report. Sandy, did you have something to say?
I just wondered if we couldn't vote to, in principle, accept.
I was just gonna.
Okay, I move that we vote to accept the report in principle, that we will make some minor modifications and move
I
forward.
second.
So can we actually have an official vote? Do we do the?
I'll take a roll call vote. 1 second, please. Okay. Working group members, I will call on you and you unmute yourself and announce your vote either in favor, against, abstain, or not entitled. Okay, Jim Collins.
Oppose. I'm a stick in the mud.
Kavitha Matthew.
I approve. What am I supposed to say? Approve
Well, in favor of.
In favor. I am in favor of accepting it with minor changes.
Sandy McKee.
In favor.
All right, Wells is not here. Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Lou Sapersky.
In favor.
Sandro is not here. Letty Simon.
In favor, and I'd like to thank Kavitha and Corinne and Sandy for all of their hard work on this.
As do I.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
In favor.
Claude L. Winfield.
Pro.
Was that an in favor? I'm sorry.
That was a pro.
Okay. Got it. All right. So we've got 7 in favor, 1 against, and 0 abstentions. So the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So moving forward again, we weren't planning to meet again as a committee for the summer months, but we are planning to break up into smaller groups who have agreed to work on these items. Well, let me just see if there's any more commentary on, this is moving into, I guess, chair's report or something, where I'm just trying to wrap up what we're doing for the next couple of months, which is really focusing in on the items that we've identified that we need help with, in addition to getting any other comments on this report and wrapping that up this week. I would like to make sure that we have that outreach. When we talk about adding outreach that's not in the report, let's make sure we're addressing at least the outreach that we have identified and those major players and who wants to take on which players, because I think it'll take this whole working group and then some to be able to do that and to be regularly in touch with them. In addition to the strategic report, we actually also have a 1-page document, which is in the main Dropbox folder. And we also have I think 10-slide PowerPoint presentation, which was meant to be a presentation should we meet with stakeholders in person and have time to actually present this or maybe send it to them. So I'd also like input on those items, and we plan to use those for further outreach. Sandy, you have your hand raised.
Just that, one of the points that Jim made was that we should try and move forward with the charrette or some time of community meeting, which of course is extremely difficult now. And it also takes a lot of planning, and it again is a fairly expensive process to go through. So I think if we can try and find, I mean, maybe plan towards that for beginning of next year, maybe. I mean, no one has a crystal ball to know when we're going to be able to do that. But if we, you know, each work individually to get some input from these groups, and then we let them know that we are planning on doing that in the future, I think that's maybe something we could also keep working towards, as it is a fairly complex thing to actually move forward with.
Agreed, Sandy. Thank you for that. I forgot about the charrette, and I do think, you know, we can try to lay the seed for that right away. But again, it's going to take some planning, and we have to decide, you know, who are we approaching for that, or who are we opening up to, because that is a big process. I also wanted to, before I forget, address, yeah, the timing. I think, was there anything else in there, Jim, that you felt needed to be corrected in terms of the graph that they'd shown about the orders? Yeah.
In terms of the report, I'll go through it again. I just read it over again this morning. I didn't make any markups, but figured that's going to be middle of the week or later in the week by the time I got a chance to do it. But the other point I wanted to raise was pursuing some of the other notions that were raised by the West Side Senior and Supportive Housing and by the borough president. Other options that I think we should be pursuing now simultaneously. We can do the charrette. We can do the whole, you know, very soft getting accountability from the neighborhood and what have you. But I think that they have their interviews yielded potentially active plans that we can pursue and that we will need to pursue simultaneously if we hope to move on them before the 23rd. I'm sorry, 2023. Does that not make sense? They were talking about the hospital plan, the federally subsidized hospital plan. We've got Carlina Rivera as the chair of the hospital committee of the city council. And the borough president talked about the affordable housing notion.
So I think a couple of people want to respond to that. Corinne? Or I don't know if you want to respond to that specifically, or.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can, but that's not why I raised my hand. But actually, no, not really specifically, because I've just been concentrating, thinking so much about just the website and how I'm going to pull that off, and the.
If you need any help with the website, let me know. Depends
Great.
Which language you're using.
Yeah, so, you know, so that's really just kind of been on the front of my mind, and then, you know, Kavitha, you and me have both volunteered to sit on the MSBI task force. I already indicated I'm going to make sure that we have good outreach with the Stuyvesant Park Association. So, yeah, the reason I just kind of raised my hand was, you know, we should start, all of us should start putting out feelers to these communities. You know, maybe one of us should attend even if it's via Zoom, a Stuyvesant Tenant Association meeting. We need to start reaching out to CB3. And it needs to be you know, we need to all kind of take on specific tasks for the next couple of months. So I like, Jim, what you were talking about, is that maybe something that you want to start looking into?
Well, I think there's specific action steps that we need to take to pursue the notion of the federal hospital zone, whatever the proper term is, that the West Side Senior Supportive Housing organization suggested to us. I think we also need to identify action steps that we need to do for the affordable housing that the borough president suggested. We have allies in important places, and we should be pursuing them. But I didn't see any discussion of any of this in that report.
Sandy. Go ahead, Sandy.
So, Jim, do you want Kavitha to just assign roles to people?
What I would,
I mean, that's what we're saying here, is that we need people to step
I'm
up
happy
and
to
do
help.
some of these
I'm
things.
happy to help
I mean,
out.
it's a very polite way to say it, but you know, I think we need more participation.
Bodies.
And maybe if we have some outreach to other people on the board who might have some expertise in some of these areas, I think that's fantastic.
I would add Susan Steinberg to the committee, or me.
And I think she doesn't want to belong to another committee.
Maybe she can.
But you know, I think the report does say these things need to be done, and it's up to us to do them. So
Well,
we just need to have some volunteers step up. And
I'm speaking specifically with respect to the recommendations of the elected officials.
exactly, we know we need to do these things.
Right.
So
And
we need somebody to do it.
Right, and those are action steps that need to be listed and completed. And I don't see this happening.
Well, let's just assume they're listed. Will you complete them? Would you like to volunteer to take those on? We can.
Some of them, sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really do need people to step up and take a role. Corinne is feeling stressed out. I know. I'm going to help you too, Corinne. I'm not very good at websites, so I can help you with like the language and stuff. And I know Letty's going to help. I believe that Wells is going to help with the website. And so others, if you want to at least be able to pick a couple of the organizations that we've outlined here that you can start outreach to, we can just tweak whatever we have as the one page or the other document, reaching out to them before we get the website ready to go. By website, we really do mean, I think at this point, that it's going to be, you know, maybe there's a site that people sign into and is redirected to the CB6, and there's to CB6's website, and there's a page or, you know, a couple of areas in there where we go through and discuss various aspects, you know, the current condition, what's happening on the site now, history of the site, the, you know, impending sale, the timing, and the groups around there, and be able to get out communication. We also thought it would be a good way to let our council members and everybody else we're in touch with know about, you know, like update any outreach we've done and have that on there, and any progress we may have made. We want to track that somehow.
Kavitha?
I don't know how elaborate this website you guys are thinking of should be, but in the report it does sort of suggest that it might be just a page on the Community Board 6 website. Right. And I think there would be a redirect as well. I mean, we make pages all the time. I mean, the office can do it with minimal difficulty.
Right. So Corinne, I think it's really just getting the content together. Is that right? Can I understand that correctly? And it could be the content that Bennett Midland has provided, just, you know, tweaked as needed.
No, I just really want to think about, you know, make it look really nice and design it nice and have the right language. I just need to put my head on it. It's not, I don't think once I do, it's not going to be an enormous amount of work. One of the things that we did discuss that would be really nice to have on the site that I could maybe have a volunteer for is just a little bit of history of the area. You know, so yes, I mean, Jesus, to answer your question, yes, it will just be, you know, just a few pages, you know, introduction, where you can sign up for a mailing list. This was, you know, so that there's a very specific mailing list where people get very specific updates about what we're doing. So not CB6 updates, but what is happening with with the Portland Place.
Corinne and Kavitha. Yeah, when we had talked about this on one of the calls that I was on with you all and Bennett Midland, and now that Corinne has purchased the domain name, it's pretty straightforward, as you all were saying, to have that at least temporarily redirect and to a page on the CV6 website that can have links out to multiple pages. And I'm happy to work with Corinne and whoever else to just get that off the ground. And given that, like Kavitha was saying, there is so much content that was created by Bennett Midland, it shouldn't be too hard. But I would certainly appreciate, creative imagery and other ways that we can convey this information on the site.
And I believe, hang on, Jim, I'm going to call on you in a second, but I know Wells isn't on the meeting tonight, but I do believe she had expressed interest in it and has a background in some of that work, so should be able to help as well. And I do think it should just live on the CB6 website since we are part of CB6, whether, and it should redirect from that site that you purchased. Jim, go ahead.
Just, 2 questions. Is there any consensus on the committee to pursue either of the 2 substantive notions that were presented to us by elected officials, either simultaneously with or as part of this other reasoning element, where it's mostly meetings and follow-ups and what have you? Is there any interest in following up with the meeting for the hospital element or for the affordable housing, and pursuing action steps related to those 2? And the second question is there any interest in doing other types of outreach, such as reaching out to the Stuyvesant Town newspaper to do a story, and maybe doing some micro-targeted social media advertising limited to, say, our zip code, and so probably do it, I'm guessing, for under $1,000.
Yeah, a lot less than that. I think that's a very good idea.
I'm going to let a couple of people talk before I respond to that one. Corinne, did you still have your hand up? No? Okay. Okay, so I think, yeah, I mean, we want to get at this from every angle as far as I'm concerned, but again, we need somebody to do it. It's not just something that I want to throw out into the ether and hope that it comes back and is done. If you're willing to take on some of that legwork, Jim, I think that
The legwork for the 2 projects?
For everything you just laid out.
Fine.
Just even if it's just laying out what needs to get done, what you see as the follow-up to it, you find those important. And also in terms of the newspaper articles.
You deleted yourself.
Oh, I deleted myself. I think we should get a little further along on our messaging and our, what we want to say before we go into an article. I think we should have a couple of outreach meetings or something before we, or at least lead up to, we have an outreach meeting coming up and it's open to the community and it's on X date. I want to have something of substance to be able to say, but I think a newspaper article in a local publication would be a great thing. Sandy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if over the summer, if we compile this list, I know we haven't been very good at signing up for things so far, but if we add to that original list, and then we can get people to sign up and maybe ask other people on the board to kind of chip in. But Jim, why don't you add your very specific items onto that list that Cody sent around, and we can get people to sign up then.
Please. It was an Airtable list that you sent out.
What I'll do is in that email I'll send you all tomorrow morning with the so that there's a singular thread so that folks can reply with edits to the final report from Bennett Midland. I'll send around the form again, but I'll also send a link in there so that everyone can see the tasks that others have already signed up for, so that there's not everyone signing up for one thing.
I think I signed up to reach out to the Quaker school, the Society of Friends high school or school.
The Friends.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I never heard anything back. What you wanted me to say? All right. No, we're out for the summer now.
Actually, most schools have the administration is there.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I think now that we have, sorry to jump in, but I think now that we have the one page sort of description, we thought people could take that and approach them.
And yeah, I think at the very least, if we can kind of get that 10-pager on the website, on our website, maybe we can review it, Corinne, and whoever else wants to work on it, Letty, I don't know, and just see if it's ready to kind of publish on there with some tweaks, then we can refer people to that.
Yeah.
and send those.
Yeah, I mean, my schedule will be a lot clearer after this week, and I will dive into it and give you all the notes and get it done as fast as I can.
Yeah, it's okay, Corinne. We can get there. I think we'll all focus on it in the next coming weeks. I just don't want to lose sight of it. I didn't think we needed to have the full committee meetings. I hope others agree, but I will be bugging everybody throughout the summer. So forward to it.
This is Rich. Can I speak for a minute? I just want to note that I'm almost over my flu, and you guys will have me back. I can make some commitments that I can keep, especially because I lost my biggest client this week, so I have a lot of free time.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Rich.
It's I'll manage, but I'd like so.
Yeah. Privately. Reg,
So
Pardon?
I say hit me up privately. Send me an
I
email.
will. I'll email you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So beyond that, I don't have any other chairs report. We will be reaching out and reminding you about these things that we need, and we'll follow up. I don't know if at this point we should consider any further consulting work with anybody. I don't know if you guys feel we need that, or if we should just go further a little bit on our own first and then regroup. Go ahead, Jim.
Can I just speak for 1 second? Okay.
Sure.
I know I seem like a major pain in the ass, all right? And that's part of my nature. But I thought it was necessary to red team this document to get it better. Now, you all disagree. That is not in all a reflection on the work that Sandra, Kavitha, and Karen, and whoever else was involved in the task force. It was, like I say, it was red teaming the report and doing it so that it was better.
Understood, Jim. I think we all took it that way, and we're going to make the changes and make it. I think there are some things that really should be clarified in there. So I think I said it in the emails, and I do appreciate that you took the time to look through it so carefully and call out things that you didn't find clear or thought there were issues with. I mean, because of that, I followed up with them immediately on a few things. So, let's just get it to the point where everyone feels good about the report. And then we can talk about any further work. Financial modeling is a huge thing that we know we don't necessarily have a budget for, and we don't know how we're moving forward with. I don't know if any of you have any contacts you think we should reach out to on the board or outside of it, but that's one thing that we should really think about. Corinne?
Yeah. I mean, this is not really in the report, I believe, but this was definitely discussed in the meetings a lot. Is that once we get a little further and we have some more buy-in and some more ideas, was one of the suggestions that they made is that we approach MSBI and they will fund the financial modeling because they will actually pay for it. They think that it's that is something that MSBI could actually take debate on. And I believe, Jim, you have done work like this, right? But financial modeling and auditing.
Market. I do modeling. I say not in the real estate market. I do modeling for acquisitions and things of that nature, but not. You kind of need to have a database for real estate. And I don't, in order to do the valuations, if they want to tell me what their anticipated revenues are, yeah, I can model that, but not the gross cost, which is,
Kavitha, one thing that might be helpful is maybe a little bit more detail on Bennett Midland's part on sort of costs that can be expected. I do know that here on page 12 of the report, they do talk about the likely cost of a comparative market analysis, and it's a wide range, but they don't necessarily mention, like, if we were to engage them or any other firm, what sort of costs might we be looking at? Given the budget is very uncertain right now, it would be helpful to have as much detail as possible. Okay. As far as like what could we, if we have a small budget, what could we do? If we have a medium-sized budget, what could we do, and so forth.
Did you see the other part where they did lay out some of the
Well, maybe I
proposed-
missed that.
They had
we-
laid out some proposed work, but they can't do the financial modeling themselves. But there were other things with community outreach and engagement and organizing meetings and such that I don't, they broke it down into estimated costs. It should be in that folder as well. And if it's not, I'll make sure.
I can do the financial modeling if I get reasonable, numbers and assumptions that we wish to use. So for example, what the gross revenues are going to be, what the carrying costs are going to be, those sort of things in the aggregate. Okay, I can discount that and bring it to a present value. But I don't know enough about commercial real estate or residential real estate for that matter to weigh in on any of that. If somebody, perhaps somebody on the board that does works in real estate or is a real estate agent, maybe Carlina Rivera's chief of staff might be, Pedro Carrillo might be able to provide an estimate of the kind of numbers that we would be looking at, and then it's just plugging them into a financial model, and also figuring out what the estimated costs would be, carrying costs and what have you, what the load would be. Depends on how they're planning to finance the real estate. If they're planning to finance it through grants or through loans or a combination, we'd need to know that number too. That's basic to the modeling, but I can't help with the other detail. Kavitha being a realist, an architect, perhaps you have contacts that could volunteer to give some reasonable assessment, and then we can all decide on an interest rate and take it from there.
Yeah, I think we'll all kind of reach out to our contacts.
It would be helpful. The city does contract with a commercial real estate firm. Because there's a lot of real estate that the city manages. We can reach out to them and see if this is a project that they'd be willing to take on, or if they can, get us the city's rate.
Right.
So that,
or even, give us those limited, like the information that Jim's talking about, if we can kind of collaborate and get that. And if we get it directly from the city's commercial real estate firm, I think we'd be in better shape.
Okay.
And that would be great. I think we should do that, follow up with it. Corinne? No? Okay.
Even though I'm looking in a Dropbox and I was looking for the one pager, I don't see it. Am I just
not in
It's
the
in
final?
the deliverables,
It's in a deliverable. It's
final
okay, thank you.
deliverables. I think it's
Okay.
there.
Actually, I think the one pager might be in the main. When I looked at it, it was in the main Dropbox and not in that subfolder.
Oh, okay.
But the 10-page one, Letty, was in the
That,
final.
yeah, that was the stakeholders.
Yes.
I'll find it.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And I think
That's it.
there is in addition, in the final deliverables is where they lay out, Jesus, the potential for, additional consultancy. And I'm not saying, not sure which ones we need or want to look to other consultants for at this point. I think it's something that we consider though.
Jesus, are you?
I'll take a look at that.
Are you, Jesus, in the city government that might have a listing of boards of directors or contacts? Most of them, I imagine, would go through managing the co-ops. I know go mostly through managing agents, but I'm wondering about, tenants committees and things like that. Is there any central locale for all of that in the city government that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. We do have an old list. We can see about mining that for potentially updating the contacts, but we can also look around and see if such a list exists, but not that I know of. Cody, do you know of anything like that?
As far as I know, a list like that doesn't exist and isn't compiled anywhere, like on open data or by a city agency. But Jesus is right. We do have an older list that we've consulted when we have done mailers and other things, targeted mailers about issues on a specific block beforehand.
that might be worth looking at, and we can just say, you know, tenants committee at X address, and then just send them, presumably we'd have to send it snail mail, right? I don't think we have their email addresses, and probably it's not active anymore if it is. But do we have any kind of budget to operate with here?
I mean, if it's sending out letters and stuff, yeah, we have a little bit of a
Do that
budget.
out of your budget, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say about what Corinne mentioned about maybe MSBI funding the financial modeling. I think in order to get them to think about doing that, we still need to double down and get community support and you know, local council members and everybody else kind of understanding what we're trying to do and supporting it, so that there's some pressure on MSBI to want to cooperate with us. Otherwise, I don't see it happening.
Yes, that's exactly what came out of all of this, was that basically unless we build more of a infrastructure and more support, nothing's going to happen. We need to get more people on board. Period.
Are we reaching out to other committee members? Are we telling them that we need assistance? To the entire board, I meant.
We can reach out to other committee chairs, I would think, or I don't know if we reach out to the entire group. I don't know if that would be Andy.
I mean, I think at exec, we mentioned, as Kavitha mentioned, it came up like, why can't we get some input from other people, other groups, that no one followed through. So I think if we have very specific tasks, that's going to help. And we focus, you know, we think ahead of time who's good at that.
Yeah, yeah. We were also going to talk about renaming 197A so that it was clearer what we're meeting about most of the time, so that so that people can start joining these meetings. That was the other thing we talked about.
Yeah, I have a question about that, though. I know we went back and forth about whether it was it renaming the whole working group, or was it renaming a subgroup of it that's working on MSBI? Because there are other things that were in that original 197A that we will continue to investigate.
I thought it was a subgroup.
Yeah.
That we, and I think, Corinne, you had a great name, but I can't remember it.
Oh yeah, well we had, isn't it the Pullman Place one?
I mean, the website that I bought is Perlman Place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We said like Perlman Place strategic planning.
What is it again?
Perlman Place. I bought .org and .com.
Okay.
Just because we wanted to orient it as not necessarily this is CB6, not necessarily this is 197A, but this is focused on this part of the community, you know. And it's the Nathan Perlman Place, those two addresses that we're really focused on. So it was just calling those to attention, and it was kind of catchy. So
you might want to set up a Twitter handle for that too.
There you go. I'm not.
You want to do that? You want to do that, Jim?
Well, yeah, send me the exact spelling of the name. I'll set it up.
Sure.
I know that Bennett Midland weighed in when we said PPP, and they thought it would be confused with the loans. So because it was Perlman Place planning, you know, like something like that, or Perlman Place strategic planning. But maybe we just.
Karen, do you have an email address for the website yet?
No.
Okay. Well, because they connect the Twitter handles to the email addresses.
Okay. Well,
you know if you have a Gmail or something like that for this purpose only, that's fine.
Maybe it should go to the office in the end. Maybe the office should set up an email for that.
Well, hey, Suze, you want
to kind of help the office sort of better be clear about how the committee is going to proceed, maybe the committee can identify maybe the most immediate 3 milestones that need to happen. Like it seems like the edits for the finalization of the report need to be in by the end of the week, the website needs to go live, and then maybe something else. And then that way we know, okay, this outreach is starting in earnest.
Yeah, we should have a Gantt chart going.
So is the
Not
working
only
group
this
ready to do that today, or do they want to get back to us on that?
No, let's just go through it now if we can. I agree that definitely we need the input on the report by, and it's a holiday weekend, right? So can we say by Thursday of this week?
Okay, report edits must be into the office by Thursday, the 2nd of July.
And then in terms of the website, I'm not sure how long we want to, what do you think? Corinne, do you have any thoughts about how we should proceed with that? I don't want to, we can keep tweaking as we go, but.
Yeah, I think I think I want to have the language of the opening page close to ready and the design by the end of next week. That's definitely my goal. I will definitely work on it next week. Barring,
Which platform are you using?
I don't know yet.
Okay,
I mean,
so we'll have a mock-up of the website by July 10th.
Okay.
Corinne, I can
Maybe
work with you to mock up, using the tools that we have associated with our current site, and just even if that's just a placeholder for the time being.
Okay, thank you. And
I'm sorry.
yeah, just actually, Kavitha, you said that I thought of a pithy name, but if I remember, and but unfortunately my notes are back in the city, but I think Cody came up with a pithy name.
Oh, that's
Cody.
right, Cody.
Cody, do you remember?
Wow.
I think you said.
Way to put me on the spot. Thank you. I will refer to my notes as well.
I think it's Perlman Place Strategic Planning Group. I don't know. I have it in my notes too.
Something like that. Yeah.
Kavitha, do you think it would be possible to get a Word version of the Bennett Midland report so that we can do our edits and then just give them a red line copy?
I mean,
We can pull it from a PDF into a Google Doc, that kind of thing we can do.
But let's mark up a PDF. It's so much
Really hard
kinder.
to do it. I did that yesterday and it's not fun.
It's just that, I've had people completely re-edit things that I've written, and it's really annoying.
Oh no, I know.
Dangerous.
Well,
Totally annoying.
it's dangerous if you're not careful. But I'm just saying, if you give me a Word version of it, take the Bennett Williams logo off it so nothing is attributed incorrectly to them, and then just do a
You have to track changes.
red line draft. Well, that's what I mean. Do a red line draft, and they can see what we have changed or we're suggesting to change, and then they can sign off on it. It's
well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we're talking about super extensive changes at this point. I think we're talking about boiling it down, distilling it to, those words that we all kind of agreed we can revisit in the proposal, the, emissions, Brad's name and, the address of that place. So I don't think these are like full on, they are gonna, I'm a little nervous about the Word version because I feel like it's gonna go down this rabbit hole of corrections, and that's not what I want to.
No, I would stick basically to the things that I mentioned.
But even the things you mentioned, Jim, I think we didn't all agree upon, like in full, right? So deleting those full paragraphs and things, I'm not in agreement with that.
And it's already marked up, so you don't need to go back.
You don't need to redo it. I think it's really taking those and seeing which things we've all kind of weighed in on and agreed upon. We'll send out a final, markup if you want to everybody, and that's it. Then we go from there.
So it sounds like the three most immediate tasks, action items that this working group has to accomplish is report edits must be into the office by Thursday, July 3rd. A mock-up of the website will hopefully be available by July 10th. And tomorrow, Cody will resend the sign-up sheet for tasks, and we will want that back by whenever, or just or a specific date.
Why
not by Thursday?
By Thursday, 7/3. Okay.
I was gonna give it till Monday, but you're even tougher than me, so go for it.
Well, you're the chair. You're the chair.
And just to be clear, you do want me to pursue those other items, the hospital and the affordable housing initiative.
Well, by pursue, I mean, investigate. what we should
Lay out what, yeah, investigate it.
I know, list the tasks that you
Yes,
are going
exactly.
to, that people need
Yes.
to
take it
do.
from there.
Precisely.
Right, I don't think until we get our messaging all agreed upon, I don't think we need
Mhm.
to have anybody outreach and say,
I just don't want to, I think these things have to be carried on simultaneously, because
you
if
don't
we
wanna
do
lose
them,
time.
if
I
we do
agree.
them successively, we're going to be out of time.
I agree. Anything that people are willing to take on, I'm thrilled that we're, going further.
As long as I get the hospital wing named after me.
All right, that, lead us-
Kavitha, according to my notes, the name that I had come up with on that call was
see it on
Perlman
the-
Place Community Planning.
I like that.
Ah,
I like that because it has the word community in there. I think it's very nice.
Where is Perlman Place, though?
Perlman Place is that's the thing, that the address is 1 Perlman Place and 10 Perlman Place, so.
Coleman Place is right next to the park.
I live on the west side of the park.
On the east side, it's right next to the park.
Yeah, I never.
You guys didn't want Mount Sinai anywhere in the name?
I honestly don't, but I don't know if others. Because
Um,
really we're talking about the future once Mount Sinai leaves and what we want to do there, and it'll still be Perlman Place when they're gone.
Do we also want to reach out to the whoever does these certificate of need elements for hospitals for the 3rd and 6th community district as suggested? I presume those are done by the city. I don't know.
The cons are done by the state.
By the
That's a
state.
state.
Okay, can we reach out to the state and have them do an assessment for CDs 6, 2, and 3, I guess it is, consolidated?
They've already been done, right?
The cons have been done. The cons
They've
are
been
for
done separately. That was one of the elements of the report. They've
They
been
were
done
done-
separately.
They were done separately on purpose so that Mount Sinai could move ahead without us understanding what they were doing. So it's already
Right.
been done.
And I don't
Right.
think we can redo them if I understand it. It's not about redoing
No.
that.
No,
It's
no,
about-
no. I'm not suggesting that they
right,
redo
it's
them
just about reframing the goal.
for
and making-
3 community districts.
Well, we talk about 2. We talk about
I
CB3 and CB6.
Didn't they say 2, 3, and 6? I thought they said 2, 3, and 6 in the report. I'll have to go back and read it. But
Yeah.
that was my recommendation. That was my memory. So can we have the state do a consolidated CON of both of those community districts or those 3 community districts and see, because that's one of the action points that they listed was to get determine the actual needs for the downtown area as opposed to the 3 separate areas. Is there somebody that we can reach out to in state government to get that?
Yeah, I don't know how realistic it is. Do you guys know if there's any?
I don't think it's very realistic, and it's DOH that does that.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, work with DOH.
Yeah, and they've already moved on it to the extent that I don't think it's very realistic at all.
Right.
And
So
I actually think the focus of the report was that that's the past. In the future, we really need to work with CB3. So it's just like, this has happened, but let's go forward.
yeah. I mean, we really need somebody who might want to be the point person for CB6 at CB3 on these issues, who goes to those meetings around the development of MSBI on 13th and 14th. We just need somebody to attend those meetings and be our contact, our go-between, so we all know what both community boards are up to.
But in a way, you and Kavitha, by being on the, I forget what it's called, like the
Task
task force, that you're going to represent us there.
Yeah, we are. And it's really about reframing the discussion, not necessarily about, redoing the whole,
Yeah.
to, a single one. If that makes sense. It's just that
Hey,
we.
folks,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry, I have to step away. There's nothing else that needs a quorum, is there?
I don't believe so. I think we're going to wrap it up in just a second.
Okay. I hope you'll forgive me. I'll speak with you all soon.
Take care, Rich. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye, Rich. Feel better.
Okay.
Well, just going back to that other item, consolidating those elements. They said that they wanted to shift the downtown transformation narrative to include potential sales in Community District 6. Then it says this is the third bullet point down. It says each certificate of need was reviewed separately by the Public Health and Health Planning Council, stilting discussion about the full extent of the downsizing at the state level, which presumably, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, means that if we're going to shift to this downtown narrative, then we need to have a data set to discuss that downtown narrative. No?
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, Kavita, that Jim, I believe, remember quite some time ago, we kind of dove into all of those numbers, and you gave me a lot of information, as did Susan, and there is an old link with all that information that I can dig up and send to you again.
Yeah, if you would. I would just request it from the Public Health and Health Planning Council, either through I guess whoever the senator is for that district. I don't know if it's Hoylman, or I think it's Hoylman, or the assembly member. Just have
It
them
is
request
Hoylman,
it.
yes.
Huh? That's what I would do. I would just request it. If they say no, they say no.
I mean, I don't think there's any problem requesting it, right? I mean, if that's something you want to pursue.
I think it's worth our while. That way, at least we'll have we'll have a data set
Record of having
to
requested it.
support
to
our
make it
argument.
official.
We'll have a data set to support our argument.
Mhm.
Or the what is it? The shift of the downtown transformation narrative.
Right. I know that we were talking about it more in terms of the narrative itself, not necessarily the official.
You're breaking up.
Okay. I think we were talking about it.
All right.
The narrative.
Very good.
Okay.
All right.
So
The red team's going to sign off.
So old or new business, or are we good?
We're good. We're good. Let's,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. See you later.
Can we
Bye.
learn this one?
Have a good summer, folks. I'll be speaking with you, but all right. Talk to you later.
Thank you,
All right, bye-bye.
Kavita. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.